Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara, and today we have with us Kerry Jenkins. She is a certified physician's assistant in Florida. She graduated from Nova Southeastern University in 2000 and received her master's in physician assistant studies from the University of Nebraska in 2007. Kerry has been practicing medical and aesthetic dermatology for the past 25 years. Her functional and integrative medicine education includes certifications through the School of Applied Functional Medicine and the prestigious Institute of Functional Medicine. Kerry combines her expertise in conventional dermatology with the principles of functional medicine to treat skin conditions at their root cause, ensuring long-term health and results. She offers invaluable insights to how treating the whole body rather than just the skin leads to lasting improvements in the skin. She believes that every patient has a story, and through story sharing, we gather details to map out the history and implement a plan for true healing. And she understands that all areas of their lives, physical, mental, and spiritual, are interconnected and a necessary part of their healing journey. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, so just I'm curious how your journey from obviously allopathic, probably traditional dermatology into functional medicine.
So I attribute all of this to my second daughter. I had started practicing dermatology right out of PA school, and I got married, and then we started a family, and I had two kids pretty close together. And, once you get down that path and you're just chugging along, everything was, completely fine for the first 12 of the 13 years. And, one day my youngest daughter, she was 12 at the time, she came to me and said, "You know what, Mom, I don't feel well." And immediately your ears perk up and you're like, "What do you mean you don't feel well? What's the problem? What's bothering you? Tell me a little bit more about it. Where do you hurt? What does it feel like? What makes it better? What makes it go away?" I went into full PA mode. I'm like asking her all the questions. She's like, "Whoa, back down there, Skippy. I just needed to let you know that I'm just not feeling well." And so, the conversation continued to evolve over the next several weeks, actually. And I noticed that she was having pretty obvious symptoms of maldigestion. Like, she would eat her dinner and she would belch like nobody's business. Like, she is this petite, 4'7" human, and the amount of gas that would come out of her body after she ate, I would look at her and be like, "Where did that come from?" So she was bloated and gassy, and she was belching, and she just basically said, I just don't feel well when I eat." So, okay, what am I going to do about that? So, I just started with really basic things and said, maybe we need to slow down, and you just need to eat a little bit slower, and let's make sure that you're chewing your food effectively and not rushing through the process. Maybe that has something to do with it. And so as a 12-year-old, she was, kind of open to that. And after about a week of trying that and not having much difference, she continued to complain. And I, at night, after the end of the day, when everything is quiet in the house, I went on Dr. Google and I started, Googling all the things like, what the heck is going on? And I really just came to the understanding that if I were to have taken her to her pediatrician, they would have done an upper endoscopy, maybe a lower endoscopy. They would have ordered some sort of imaging study, like an upper GI series, maybe with a small bowel follow through. They would prescribe a medication, they'd label her with IBS, and that would be the end of it. And I knew deep down inside my gut that that wasn't what was wrong with my kid. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with that type of workup. That type of workup is 100% appropriate in many instances, but I knew deep down inside that that wasn't going to tell me what was going on with my daughter. So I sat on this for, a few months. Like, I did not act immediately. I waited and I tried little things to see if it would help. And ultimately, I didn't get anywhere. And through my Googling, I came across a functional nutritionist in our town. And I approached my 12-year-old child and said, "Hey, I found a functional nutritionist. What are your thoughts on going to make an appointment and seeing her?" And she's like, "Perfect. Schedule the appointment. Let's go." And I was like, "Okay." So I scheduled this visit, and that was life-changing for me. This woman opened my eyes and allowed me to see something that I was never aware of. And when we went into her visit, first of all, the visit was 2.5 hours. It was a cash pay visit. Insurance did not cover it, but the intake paperwork that I had to fill out for this child's visit was absolutely mind-bending. And when we got into her office, immediately I'm taking a look around, and she had floor to ceiling, wall to wall books in her office. And I walked up to that bookcase and was reading all the titles, and I was pulling books off the shelf and taking pictures of all the titles. And my kid was like, "Mom, could you just be a normal person and sit down and stop embarrassing me? Like, you're acting like a fruitcake right now." And I felt like a kid in a candy store. I was, all of these books about using food as medicine and how nutrition heals the body, and all of these amazing books that I, as a conventional medical provider, had never even, we were not taught this in PA school. Our medical doctors are not taught this in med school. Our DOs are not taught this in DO school. Like, this information is not being taught. So immediately from the get-go of this visit, she had my attention, and she made a very simple recommendation and said, let's try going gluten-free and dairy-free for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and let's just see what happens. And on the inside, I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds simple. And I'm looking at a preteen, and I'm like, how am I going to make this work? And at the end of the visit, on the drive home, I just asked my daughter, "Hey, what were your thoughts? Like, what do you think about what just happened?" And she looked at me and said, "You know what, Mom, what she said made a lot of sense to me. Let's try it and just see." I was like, okay. So I'm not going to say it was easy, because it took a lot of shifting in my brain to learn how to feed my family breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how to pack lunch and dinner, or pack lunches and snacks and all the things in my daughter's lunchbox. But, after about 2 weeks, I got the hang of it. And I will tell you, 2 weeks of being gluten-free and dairy-free, my kids' world changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to sit down and take notice and think, what do you know about that? I changed my kid's diet, and her digestive problems went completely away. Like, she tended towards being a little bit more constipated. She, had this bloating and distension and this maldigestion, like, all of that stopped. And that allowed me to, find myself at this crossroads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, here I am, conventionally trained. I'm treating people the way I was trained. And this nutritionist just rocked my world. So, wow. That was my aha moment.
Well, amazing. I mean, I resonate with that story a lot, because I see myself even as a kid in a lot of what you just said, and I didn't get I got diagnosed with IBS when I was 23, and still didn't get any guidance about how to, or what I should even try. So it was definitely a much slower learning curve for me. So I'm so grateful, not only for you and what you found, but also just the time, the age that we're living in, where this information is available. Because I think as a kid of the 80s, it just wasn't there. It wasn't. So in no way, shape, or form am I thinking about, well, what the hell was my mom doing? Not at all, not at all.
Right.
Because this is, I think this is information that we've maybe like ancestrally and historically known over time that's been lost.
Yes.
And then with the way allopathic medicine evolved, it wasn't, and it's still not, like you said, discussed or taught. So I'm really grateful. But so let's move into why the gut is the key to good skin health, because I've had to explain this. My mom again will say, "Oh, I have this thing going on. What should I do?" I'm like, "Well, what are you eating?" Well,
Mhm.
why does that matter? So let's talk about why that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes to exactly what you said, right? Like conventional medicine has siloed every single system in our body has a specialist. We have pulmonologists that deal with our respiratory system. We have neurologists that deal with our neurological system. We have gastroenterologists that deal with our GI tract. We have dermatologists that deal with our skin. Well, here's a news flash, everybody. Everything is 100% interconnected. And what you put in your mouth affects your gut, which, if that very delicate balance is disrupted, it's going to show up all over your skin. So, there's something called the gut brain connection, the gut skin connection. Your gut is the central part, metaphysically, literally, it's the central
Mm-hmm.
part, but it is the main communication hub with all the systems of the body. The gut is speaking to the brain directly via the vagus nerve. The gut is speaking to the skin directly via chemokines and all of these signaling peptides and proteins and molecules. And the liver gets in on that action. The liver doesn't want to be left out, right? The liver is one of our main detoxification organs. So if what you're eating is not nutritionally sound and it has a lot of pesticides and artificial dyes and preservatives and all this yuck anti-nutrients come in the food through the digestive system, your liver has got to process all of that, right? It's got to clean all that up. So if you develop a skin rash, or you develop acne or rosacea as an adult, acne as a teen, or you develop psoriasis as an adult, or you develop atopic dermatitis or eczema as an infant or a young child, that is all a direct representation of what your gut is trying to process and what your liver is trying to detoxify.
Mm-hmm.
So food is medicine.
Yeah. So let's say someone out there maybe is dealing with eczema or psoriasis, and they most likely, if they have if they know that, then they've been to the doctor, because you don't just magically start bringing those words into your vocabulary.
Right.
Maybe Dr. Google a little, but
Yeah.
usually then you at least go to your doctor. So then they're probably given some sort of steroids, topical steroids. Maybe they've, even if it's psoriasis, they've been told they need to be on some sort of immunomodulating therapy. What can they do to maybe either support those treatments and or maybe totally get away from those in a healing way?
Yeah, so it's really amazing. I have mamas who are bringing me, 3, 4, 7-month-old infants who are head to toe covered in eczema, right? They are scratching themselves till they bleed. Nobody in the family is sleeping because the infant is so upset and uncomfortable and itchy. And they go into the pediatrician. The pediatrician says, here's your topical steroid, which is a Band-Aid, right? That is not
Mm-hmm.
identifying and treating the root cause of disease. That is just a Band-Aid treating the symptom. And the mama goes home and tries the steroid. And of course, when you put the steroid on, it helps reduce that inflammation and that itch. But then the minute you stop, what happens? We've got a rebound phenomenon, right? And then they go back to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician says, okay, this is no longer in my wheelhouse. Now you need to go see the dermatologist. And the very first time these mamas are bringing these infants into the dermatology provider is recommending Dupixent, which is an immunomodulating drug, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of these parents that are coming in saying, I am not going to put my kid on an immunosuppressant medication at 7 months old. What do I
Right?
do?
God, that sounds insane.
It is insane. And I'm not saying, again, I am not anti-medicine. I am not anti-conventional medicine. For acute and traumatic things, conventional medicine saves lives. I am not anti-medicine. I am not anti-doctors. I am anti, let's just put a Band-Aid on the symptom for a chronic condition, because
Yeah.
that does nothing for them. So to answer your question, people, I feel like there is a very big shift that is starting to happen in the general population. Parents are coming in and asking these questions to the pediatrician, to the primary care doctor, to the dermatologist, to the gastroenterologist. What else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Does my diet affect my disease? And 9 times out of 10, that doctor is so busy and so behind, and they haven't been trained. They don't know how to answer that question. The patient gets brushed off and dismissed, and the question goes unanswered. But asking those questions, that's what you do. You go in and say, what else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's people like you who are hosting these amazing podcasts and bringing professionals in to speak about this. This is how we change the future of medicine. I feel like part of my purpose on this planet is to be an educator. And I named my practice Whisper Health, and I'm very sarcastic because I really want to stand on the rooftops and scream, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a better way. How do we get there? Well, we get there by being very intentional and mindful about what are we eating? What are we feeding our children?
Mm-hmm.
Does that bag of Doritos have any nutrient density in it at all? Absolutely not. They're all anti-nutrients. It's working, your body is working so much harder to detoxify the pesticides, the food colorings, the preservatives, all the crap that's coming in on that Dorito. Your body has to work 10 times harder to process that. And now your body is in a negative as far as nutrient sufficiency goes, because if garbage in equals garbage out. So it all comes down to food. What are we feeding our kids? What are we giving them to drink? What are they getting enough sunshine? Are they being able to play in the dirt and be kids? Is their day so structured with school, extracurricular activities? Let the kid be a kid. Let the kid play in the dirt. Let the kid have time outdoors. Get the vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
Allow the environment to interact with their immune system through microbes, dirt, pets, animals. That's how we modulate our immune system. And we're so far away from that our kids are just suffering tremendously. I don't know if that answered your question at all. I tend to go off topic very easily.
No, it did, but I think it also brings up, other aspects that we haven't talked about yet, which is over antibiotic use, which destroys the microbiome, and birth control, which is essentially hormone replacement for teenagers and young women. I'll let you take the floor on these, but again, like speaking from my own experience, once I hit puberty, started to have really bad acne because I had already been on a lifetime of antibiotics because I would get cyclical sinus infections. And so what do you do for a kid with a sinus infection? You give them amoxicillin or chronic ear infections, whatever it is. Here, have an antibiotic. And, like now, even like at least when I was in pharmacy school, we started talking about probiotics to replenish, some of that good flora. But really, if you think about it, it's really just to prevent C. diff. It's not because we're talking about the body in a holistic manner or making those connections that the gut and the microbiome is so connected with everything else. So it's like, it's a good thing, but it's like not even scratching the surface.
Amen. So well said. Absolutely. It's not scratching the surface. And it's wonderful that they're at least bringing it up and they're talking about it regardless. They want to cover for C. diff, but I feel like there is starting to become a shift and people are asking more questions. Even the medical providers are asking, deeper, more thought inducing questions. So, essentially you mentioned two amazing points, the overprescription of antibiotics. And again, I am not anti-drug.
Right. Me either.
Antibiotics
Absolutely.
save
Yeah.
lives, right? They save lives.
Absolutely.
But when we have chronic conditions like in a child, chronic ear infections, we need to stop right there and say, okay, time out. Why is this child suffering with chronic ear infections or suffering with chronic sinus infections? What is driving this process? And a lot of times, especially for the young kids with these chronic ear infections, it's dairy. Dairy
Mhm.
is the problem. Dairy is so inflammatory. Not to mention that those poor cattle are pumped full of antibiotics, pumped full of growth hormones. All of these additives are put into the cattle's feed to keep them fat and happy and producing milk. So again, what happens? We're giving these kids milk full of hormones, full of antibiotics. What do we think is happening to our gut microbiome? Our gut microbiome is capable of either providing wonderful vitality and health or not, and having illness and chronic infections. It's either black or white. There is no gray. Everything that goes in your mouth is either inflammatory and works towards illness and inflammation, or it's nutrient producing and it's providing benefit and nutrient vitamins and minerals and all the amazing things that our biochemistry, our human biochemistry requires in order to optimize function.
Mhm.
So if what we are eating or what we are eating is pumped full of antibiotics, it is killing our good gut flora, and our gut flora are responsible for health or illness. So we have to stand up and take awareness, be aware of what chronic antibiotics are doing. It is promoting this absolute disastrous environment for certain microbes to overgrow, primarily yeast.
Mhm.
And those opportunistic gut microbes that once they take over the space, that is a big problem. That's creating massive inflammation in the GI tract. When you have that inflammation from that microbial overgrowth, those opportunistic bugs like Klebsiella, Proteobacter, Pseudomonas, Candida, when those organisms take a hold, they promote the inflammatory cycle, which then sets off the alarm bells in the immune system, because the tight junctions inside the GI tract, which are meant to be locked down and serve as a gate, impenetrable, keep everything on the inside, begins to open up. And things that are not supposed to pass through will pass through into systemic inflammation. Now our immune system is upregulated, and oh my God, Houston, sound the alarm. We've got invaders. This is what sepsis is,
Mhm.
right? So this is how autoimmune processes begin, is, it's just
Yeah.
a domino effect. So the antibiotics is a big problem. The oral contraceptives is a big problem. Oral contraceptives are depleting our B vitamins, which is incredibly important in our detoxification processes. Our phase 1 and our phase 2 liver detoxification need B vitamins, and oral contraceptives are completely depleting our B vitamins. And is the OBGYN or the dermatologist or the pediatrician who's prescribing said oral contraceptives saying, hey, listen, we need to put you on a B complex, or, we need to keep an eye on your nutrients, your fat soluble vitamins. We need to keep an eye on what's going on for you. That's not even mentioned.
Mm-mm.
So, these medications, again, I'm not anti-drug. Well, I may be just a little bit, but in the right
So much. We're
situation,
anti so much drug.
yeah, so much drug. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's just funny too, because, sometimes you'll get, there's a myriad of reasons that a young female will be put on some sort of hormone replacement therapy. And a lot of times it could be for a skin condition.
Yeah.
It's not just for preventing a pregnancy. And so, and again, it's just so ironic. Like, we don't even ask ourselves, like you said, like, how did we get here? Well, because we overprescribed antibiotics, we screwed up, we completely depleted our microbiome.
Mhm.
So, because our skin also has a microbiome. So, yes, we have the
Yes.
microbiome of the gut, but we
Mhm.
also have one on the outside. And so,
Yep.
when that's disrupted, that causes, again, some sort of eruption, whether it's over drying, over oiling, a very confused, maybe you have both going on.
Mhm. Happens
um
all the time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I guess, yeah, like you said, like at the very beginning, just ask more questions.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with asking more questions. If you see any practitioner that gets exacerbated with you for asking more questions, it's time to move on.
Amen. Say it again, sister. Like, there are plenty of second and third and fourth opinions available. If you are not being heard and you feel like you're being dismissed, smile, say thank you, leave the office, and never return.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did talk about a few, like you talked about some, the B vitamins, which I also want to point out are instrumental in proper neurological function. So, and again, like, and since we've been talking about, kids so much just from sort of like the evolutionary perspective of like, how do we get from point A to point B as what happened as a kid from where we are as adults? Like mental health, that, hello, neurological function and mental health interconnected. You can't separate those two. And so no matter how old you are listening to this, I would, if you're feeling, in some way mentally imbalanced, or you're having some sort of neurological disorder, whether it's neuropathy, meaning tingling or burning in the extremities, or maybe even something like carpal tunnel, which is also neurologically based, let's look at your B vitamin balance and your status there. So thank you for bringing that forward. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Like, I feel like today's youth, there is an absolute epidemic of mental health. These kids are suffering. There's so much suffering going on in today's youth in the form of anxiety and depression and OCD and ADD and ADHD. And again, we have to stop and ask why. What's driving that? And it all comes back to the gut, essentially, and the vitamin and the nutrient intake and the nutrient sufficiency.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's made in the gut, just so in case somehow maybe this is the first time listening to my show and this is your first episode. So this is, maybe if you're a frequent listener, this might feel like a review, but since, we're already talking about how the gut is the central to our skin, let's also talk about what else is made in the gut that is central to our health.
Oh, this is so exciting. So, people will be absolutely amazed to learn that our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. Okay.
Yeah.
So serotonin, which is our happy chemical, that is made by the enterocytes in the gut lining. So if the gut is inflamed and the immune system is activated, there's not a whole lot of serotonin being made because the system is on high alert. There's something wrong. So when we start talking about depression, serotonin can't be produced optimally when the gut is a train wreck. And that's just one of many neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, norepinephrine. Like, there's so many neurotransmitters that are made inside the GI tract, and nobody's talking about that.
Right. They're made in the gut and they're transported to the brain for action.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Oh, that's huge, people. That's really huge.
Yep. Dopamine, all of the good ones. Yes.
Yeah. So again, I mean, like, yes, this is affecting our children, but like adults too, like just the fact that we're so attached to our devices and the screen time is really screwing with our dopamine levels. And again, like if our microbiome's out of whack and we're not producing enough serotonin naturally, then we definitely don't have enough melatonin. So now most people are probably supplementing with melatonin, which, I mean, it's not awful, but there's a pathway to get back to that endogenous production. Yes, thank you. Which just means like inside your body naturally, instead of exogenous is when you put it in from the outside, which is a supplement. So again, like even when we're talking about supplementation, ideally we only want you to be on supplements for a short amount of time if possible. I mean, our food supply these days isn't fantastic and it is depleted of a lot of the things that used to be there, but it's just a matter of staying diligent too and monitoring where you are and how you're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Cool. So what would people, let's say we have someone right now that's listening that just is at their wits' end with their psoriasis. It's not getting better. They've done all the traditional treatments and yes, it's gotten, maybe it like quiets it down, but it's not going away. Where do they start with food to maybe turn things around?
Yeah. Vegetables. People don't eat vegetables. Like, they're not getting the amount of fiber. If we think about ancestrally, what our grandparents used to eat, just our grandparents, what our grandparents used to eat compared to what we're eating and what we're feeding our families today, people aren't getting even the barest minimum of intake of fiber. And then if you go back another generation, your grandparents, their fiber intake was even higher. So we have slowly completely lost fruits and vegetables, more vegetables than fruit. A lot of people still do eat fruit, but the vegetables that we're eating are just, the intake is very, very low. So the first thing that I talk to all of my patients, whatever type of chronic skin condition you have, immediately, the first thing I'm talking about is, tell me what you're eating for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and for snacks. How much water are you drinking? Where are your healthy fats? Are you eating healthy fats? There's so many people that are so fat phobic. Oh my God, I have to have fat free. No, you do not. Your steroid hormones need cholesterol, which comes from healthy fat. If you don't have that, you can't make hormones. You can't make the things that your body needs in order to function optimally. So I always come back to food. What are you eating? What are you drinking? So many people are addicted to soda pop. They're having fruit juice. They're drinking these energy drinks. They're having alcohol at night to wind down because they're so amped up from their coffee during the day, right? It just becomes a vicious cycle. So really taking time to say, okay, how can we increase your dietary fiber? And what does that look like for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner? Looking at their environment. What kind of personal care products are you putting on your body? What kind of chemicals are in those personal care products? Let's talk about how much your liver and your kidneys are having to detoxify from all the chemicals that you're exposed to. I read a study recently that said the average woman uses something like 48 products before she even gets out the front door to go to work. And the amount of chemicals in those 48 products are a mile long. And you have to think about what your body has to go through to make those chemicals not toxic to our cells.
Yeah.
So thinking about our personal care products, what are we using to wash our clothes? What are we using to spray our countertops and clean the countertops? What are we using to clean the floors? All of those things add up. And then we really dive into digestion. How well is your gallbladder working? Are you able to utilize bile appropriately? Are you making enough bile? Or is your gallbladder contracting beautifully to excrete that bile when you have healthy fats coming in through your diet? Most people's gallbladders are so mucked up with sludge and stones and all this stuff that their gallbladders aren't functioning properly. So it's no wonder that, psoriasis is, bile is very important. Take home message, bile is very important.
What if they had their gallbladder removed?
Oh, dear Lord. And there's so many women have had that taken out unnecessarily. Yeah. So those people that have had a cholecystectomy or their gallbladder removed for whatever reason, I would go out on a limb and say 9 out of every 10 of those people, most of them are women, were never counseled on how to manage their digestion now that they no longer have a gallbladder. Those people need to be on supplements, digestive enzymes that contain ox bile or taurine or TUDCA or something to help make bile salts and produce copious amounts of bile so that they can, secrete bile for when they eat. Bile is a detergent. It helps keep the gut microbes balanced. It helps break down healthy fats so that you can absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K, which are your fat solubles. Bile is so important to our immune system to keep our immune system in balance. Like bile has 17 different functions in our body and nobody is talking about it. But those women need to be aware that they should be supplementing with something to help their liver make proper amounts of bile and to secrete proper amounts of bile when they eat.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to rewind a little bit about what you said about just our self-care products. So shampoo, conditioner, makeup, cream, like any cosmetic product. Really, 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 I really encourage you guys to get picky. Start reading labels, start using apps like EWG. EWG has an app that you can download so you can scan barcodes when you're in the store and just see, it gives it like a color coding rating and like red, obviously you want to stay away from, and green better. And I swear, you guys, I don't think we need so much stuff. Like even just something as simple as castor oil or coconut oil for the skin can be super healing and balancing. So it could save you money in the long run.
Yeah, and save your liver and kidneys a heck of a lot of work.
Yeah. So is there a topical regimen that you recommend as a functional dermatologist? sorry, for functional dermatologists, once you have them on the right, dietary approach, and, do you go through this process of like weaning them off of, again, the traditional approach versus, your functional approach?
Yeah, we definitely do wean them off of the steroids and the non-steroidal products that you're using to the best of our ability.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that you mentioned the EWG's app. It's called Think Dirty, and it's so simple. You enable it to scan the barcode, and it will give you that beautiful color-coded rating. Another app that I have my patients look at is the Yuka app, Yuka. It's another, you can scan the barcode. And what you're really trying to do is just be very mindful of the toxicity of the chemicals that are in your personal care products, because those are going directly on your skin. Like you mentioned, shampoo, conditioner, moisturizer, toothpaste, makeup, SPF. All of these things have toxins in them, and your body has to process that. So if we think about our body and a bucket, all of those toxins are like a faucet that is dripping. Drip, 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 drip. The more time you have on this planet, the older you are, the more drips in that bucket you have. And once that bucket gets to the top and starts overflowing, that's where disease gets identified, right? So we're constantly trying to lower our body burden bucket. We're trying to lower the chemical toxins that are going into our body, the pesticides that are going in our body, the food colorings, like all of these things. We inhale toxins through our respiratory system. We apply toxins on our skin. We ingest them with the food and water we drink. So just trying to be mindful of that bucket and offload as much of that as possible so that we don't get to a point of having disease like psoriasis.
Mm-hmm. Um, have you worked at all with any types of skin cancers? And what, sorry, excuse me. And what has your experience been like with that whole process, if you have?
Yeah, so skin cancers are a little bit more difficult and challenging. People that get non-melanoma skin cancers are typically very fair individuals like yourself, very fair skin, light eyes, light hair. Those are the people that are getting basal cell squamous cell carcinoma with extended periods of time being outdoors and getting that UV radiation. So that damage from that UV radiation is done very deep in the skin. And over time, it slowly works its way to the surface. And that's where that either precancer or that actual skin cancer lesion shows up on the skin. So there's not really a lot in the functional dermatology space that can offset that. We want people to be in the sun, but do it smartly. Like people that have very fair skin coloring, like you, Dr. May, you want to avoid the sun between 10 and 2. We do want you to get some sun because that's how your body makes the vitamin D, is through that UV exposure on the sun. We just want you to be smart about the timing and the duration that you're out there. For the non-melanoma or for the melanoma skin cancers, those are not UV radiation driven. Those are more genetically predisposed. And everything that we address in the functional and integrative dermatology space is going to affect that, right? Removing the toxic burden, eating organic foods, eating the right kinds of foods, making sure your digestion is really good. Like that goes a long way for melanoma. But listen, melanoma still happens. So
Yeah.
skin cancers are tricky.
Yeah. Well, because too, like it's immune mediated. So
Yes.
like, yes, yeah, like you said, like, the non-malignants are much more driven by that, how much exposure to the UV radiation over time. And then, but the melanoma, just like any cancer, is really immune mediated. So what's going on with your immune system? So your first stop, if you've, had any kind of cancer diagnosis, is start to look at your immune system and say, okay, how can I, regardless of what treatment approach you decide to go with, which like we don't even have to go down that rabbit hole, but your immune system regardless needs to be as strong as possible, and start, really supporting that. Again, food, detox burden, all of the things that we've mentioned today.
Yeah.
I think there was one more thing I was going to ask you, but it's escaped me. It'll come back. Is there anything else? Tell us about your business and your website.
So We are licensed in the state of Florida and Georgia, and our website, the name of our practice is Whisper Health. Again, I have a little bit of a snarky sense of humor, and I named it Whisper Health when I really want to stand on the rooftop screaming. But that was named with intention. I love the name of our business. And the website is www.whisper-health.com. And on our main website, you can read about functional dermatology, where we talk about the conditions we treat and how we go about it. We also, I also am a general functional medicine practice. So we treat patients with autoimmune diseases and long COVID and, all the things, chronic conditions that people are just managed with medication. But the functional dermatology is on the page, and you can get all the information there. And we do free consultations if anybody has any questions on if this is the right approach for them.
Okay. Well, and I think too, again, like always worth pointing out is that functional medicine addresses the root cause and the whole body as one big organism. So yes, you have this label of functional dermatology on your, your credentials and your website, but you're going to be addressing the whole body and the whole system. I think everyone could feel like reassured by that for sure. And I remembered what I was going to ask you. Can we talk a little bit before I let you go about sunscreens? And because I am fair, and I know I'm not the only one on the planet that, I don't also want to look like prematurely older than
right.
So like I'm still drawn to protecting myself, especially because I live at 6,000 feet and above. So I'm closer to the sun. The sun's more intense. So what's your opinion and what's your approach with that?
So I always go with a physical barrier rather than a chemical barrier. So chemical barriers are going to be your chemical names that are like this long on the back of your sunscreen bottle that you cannot pronounce. Those are chemicals. I think you guys all understand that chemicals are bad. We want to avoid those as much as possible. So when it comes to physical barrier protection, the number one recommendation I have is clothing. Wear a wide brimmed hat to protect your face, your neck, and your chest. If you're going to be out for very long periods of time, there are very tightly woven UPF fabrics that help repel those damaging UV radiation waves. So you can put on a rash guard if you're going to go to the beach, or if you're going to go on a long hike, you can put on a rash guard and cover your chest, your neck, your shoulders, your arms. They're long sleeve tees, they're short sleeve tees. So physical barriers are my preferred mechanism of action, whether it's clothing. If you have to go to a sunscreen, again, I like a physical barrier, which is going to be micronized zinc oxide. I prefer zinc over titanium. Titanium is a heavy metal. You can accumulate that over time. So that's, again, more work for your liver and your kidneys and your lymphatics to get rid of. Micronized zinc is, the clear formula. You don't have to look like a ghost. There's some beautiful formulas out there that are very clean, micronized zinc that will act as a physical barrier to keep those harmful rays from damaging your skin.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think also because of the time of year, that's a perfect place for us to wrap up today. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
No, I think this was so much fun. We got to talk about brain and neurotransmitters and all kinds of fun things.
We covered a lot of bases in a short amount of time. So thank you, Kerry. I really appreciate your time and the work that you're doing on the planet. Again, everybody, her website is whisper-health.com. So definitely check her out. Again, maybe take advantage of the free consultation. And so thank you so much. We appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun speaking to you and your audience today.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We will catch you on the flip side.